Hi, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're watching this back. I'm live here today with Hannah. Hannah Cremona and I have been talking about a lot about what most business leaders are actually struggling to harness, and that's the power of their people. So I thought we'd go live and have this conversation to try and open up some opportunities for you to hear Hannah's perspective, my perspective, what we're dealing with in industry, so that you can maybe see how this relates into your team. Now, Hannah's a business strategist and mindset mentor who's on a mission to empower others to live their fullest potential through their social impact, soul-aligned, purpose-led businesses. You can find all her details in the links below. Please do reach out to her. So nice to have you with me, Hannah.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm really excited to have this tete-a-tete with you on having conversations on leadership. It's really exciting. Thank you.
And also just want to recognize Hannah's only about a month post-birth. So she's making a massive commitment in showing up for this live today. So appreciate that as well, because I know it can be a bit crazy to organize when you've got a newborn around.
I know, but it's so good. It feels so good. Getting ready and dressed this morning was like, yes, I feel alive again in a different way. So thank you.
Cool. So this session is really sharing as leaders what you can do to turn around this pandemic, as I want to call it, of wasted human potential. Because with only 21% engagement globally, as the latest Gallup's 2022 stats showed, this is a massive waste. And especially with so much economic uncertainty and so much kind of discomfort in the world, I think. And we want to look at how you as a leader can make the best of your human talent. So I think Hannah and I are both seeing a couple of things in businesses. One, underutilization of people or people being overlooked. So they kind of end up sat in a role when actually it's maybe not playing to their strengths, not allowing them to fully contribute their value to your business. So how are you seeing this show up in businesses, Hannah?
So it became really apparent to me when I was carrying out some workshops and training sessions for some organizations here in Malta. And I started to notice how many people were actually sitting in roles. I mean, they were good in their roles and they were doing relatively well. But once they were assigned to certain tasks, you would see a whole new set of skills and strengths that were not being utilized in their role. And that made me wonder, like, why is this happening? How do we have such an exceptional speaker with this confidence, with this enthusiasm and passion, who sat behind an admin task doing, very monotonous, repeated tasks? Like, I'm sure this person would be being very successful in more front leading customer facing roles. And in fact, after having conversations, this is exactly where she wanted to be and what she wanted to be doing. So yeah, what I'm seeing is this, as you correctly said, it's pandemic. I'd call it a disease of people just sitting in roles, not fulfilling their potential, just doing the job for the sake of doing the job. And how many conversations have we had professionally and outside and socially with people who were just, going to the job Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, for the sake of doing it repeatedly and repeatedly. And I think this is where I have seen companies throughout these trainings and workshops have then, let me rephrase that. What I have seen is through these type of trainings and workshops, and whatever the topic is, especially if it's an opportunity where you see people practice something or carry out an assignment, valuable ideas that they have just been sitting on, and valuable not only to them and their professional growth, but to the business and to the sustainability of the business. Right. So this is all like leaving human potential not being recognized, not being seen, but also business potential not being reached.
Right. So this is about like a couple of sides to this. One of the things that I see when I'm working with businesses, one is that people don't know how to talk about their strengths in a positive way that actually others can understand. So you've got this kind of lack of vocabulary, and being able to have a conversation that's powerful to explain what their strengths are, but also a lack of leadership in terms of being able to harness, pull those strengths out, see their people for what they are, and create the opportunities within the business, maybe even not within their teams, to actually play to those strengths. So we've got kind of the business side and the people side, but ultimately it also impacts both. The people end up, disengaged and, a bit of cynicism when they're not being utilized in a way where they feel like they're contributing, providing value. And probably the business sees that as, that person's not fulfilling their potential, but they don't necessarily know how to harness it. So what are you getting from this as I kind of just unpick both those sides on both elements?
What I'm getting from this is two things. Number one, it's both the responsibility of the person as an employee to. So this is happening in my eyes, and from what I've seen and with the people I've been speaking to, is coming from a lack of self-belief, a lack of self-confidence, to actually step up and take that role, or to express themselves, or to apply for the next position that's available in the company. Excuse me. Oh my God.
The joys of having a baby around. Your husband coming in to ask questions.
And I don't know, someone needs a signature from me when I told them to come back later. Where was I going with that? So it's a self-empowerment, right? That so for whatever reason people don't believe in themselves enough or have the confidence to take the action. But from an organizational level, I think this is where the real responsibility is as a leader, especially if you're a business owner, a CEO, a human resources director. You have a team of people. They're working in your business for that organizational goals and whatever. Lay out the opportunities for them to speak up, for them to step up, so that they can start seeing their own potential, but also to reach the organization's potential. And so what we're saying about this dual side of things, there was another point that I wanted to mention, but it's just gone away. It will come back. I'm sure it will come back.
So let's focus on the individuals first, because there's so much power here. I mean, the things that I always encourage individuals to do is, for example, maybe do a strengths test. Do something that kind of inspires you to see yourself in a new light. That can be obviously working with a coach like us. It can be just doing a simple strengths test. There are loads of kind of tools online. The one I quite often use is, for example, the Clifton strengths test, because I really like how it's laid out in the different areas. It doesn't make you wrong for, your weaknesses. It basically says, look, go and look at where you're naturally talented. And the more you play to that, the more fun you'll have. And then when somebody's got that, then actually, encourage them to go and have that conversation with their lead to say, I've just done this amazing strengths test. How can we use my strengths to bring more value to the team, to the business, to whatever? Because I don't think I've ever heard a boss go, oh, no, really not interested. Don't have time for this conversation. Because if you can tie it to, like you were saying, the business value, the team value, then actually there is a way that most people are like, this is interesting. Because when you go to someone for feedback, you're hearing their perspectives. But when you go to them and actually give them an offer, this is where I can add value. This is where I can contribute more. How can we use this to bring more value to the business, more value to the team? Then I really think that helps turn it on its head. And I think it gets you out of your head as to going, oh, I'm boasting. Look how great I am. Because it's not about you. It's how you contribute to whatever it is you're invested in, because you're working in that business.
Yes, exactly. It's exactly that. You're part of an organization, you're part of a team. So how are you fulfilling your role, and again, individual and organization? There was something there's so many ideas are coming as you're speaking.
The one thing that I always say to people when they're worried about this is, what's the worst that's going to happen? What have you got to lose? But actually, the science is all there. The more aligned we are, the more we're playing to our strengths, the more we can leverage them and help others. We actually reduce the feelings of feeling stressed, feeling pressured, feeling, symptoms of burnout, because we feel more engaged that we can contribute something positive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're more empowered. I think this has such a huge impact on people's lives, not only your career.
Yeah.
Because once you apply what you're saying, Sarah, if you had to do something simple and so powerful like the Gallup Strength Test, for example, I have done that and I have found out so much. It just made so much more sense to me and what I was doing, and then it just said, oh, like, what am I doing, wasting my time doing this when I should really be leveraging and investing more in my natural strengths that just come so natural for me, right? So there's so much empowerment in that, and that has an impact on so many areas of your life, not only your career. But that's not the point over here. What I wanted to touch into is the fact that we also often, no matter what job you're in, no matter what industry you're in, I have experienced this, and I have seen so many people go through this of feeling not adequate or not good enough in certain roles and positions because we're trying to do it like somebody else. Because we're always trying to follow somebody else's rules, somebody else's protocol on how things should look like and how things should be like. But if we had to instead put the attention not on what we're not doing great or good enough, focus on what we can do really well, then everything will just change, right?
Yeah,
Everything.
I often talk about this we always have scope to redesign. We can redesign and move jobs. We can redesign the role that we're in. And most people say, well, I can't change my job description. And there is so much scope to redesign within a job. Like you're saying, where do I focus? Where do I bring the most value? How can I contribute in a way that brings more value? And it can be tiny things, and it can be redesigning the relationship with your boss, with your team, how you support each other. There are all these small things that you can do within any role to help you feel more satisfied, feel more fulfilled, contribute more, which we know then leads to higher motivation, higher engagement, more fun at work. So these are the kind of things that, if you can find a way to talk about your strengths in a way that feels good to you, and you use it as an opportunity for not just you, but for everyone, then I always feel like it really does open the door to then potentially other things within the organization, not just within your team.
Yeah. That could look like so many things, right? That could look like maybe a new role, that could be a promotion, that could be new business opportunities, and whatnot. But can you imagine? I just want to bring this home, because sometimes we overlook the impact that our work is having on our life. Because if we're underfulfilled and unsatisfied, again, it's coming back into your lives, it's coming back into your homes, it's coming back into your relationships. And yes, how many times have we heard people talking about burnout and being depleted and just feeling like they don't have enough time, or they don't have enough space, or they don't have enough mental energy? Everything is impacting everything in our life. So
yeah, something I was thinking about at the weekend, I was reading a book, and it was saying that instead of all this stuff's happening to us, as in we're the victim of it all, it's happening for us. What's our growth opportunity? What's the possibility that the discomfort we're currently feeling is going to launch within us? Because as humans, we like to sit in a comfort zone, but we need a certain level of discomfort to actually make us move, to actually create change within our lives. And I just love that kind of slight rephrasing. Something's not happening to us. It's like the world is conspiring against us. Actually, it's happening for us because there's an opportunity for us to change something. And I was like, oh, yeah, I like that. Got to use that.
I love that. I love that, Sarah. Every time I find myself thinking in that way, I catch myself like, why is everything going wrong? Guilty. We all have those moments, I think.
Yeah.
I invite myself to look at it as in, what is this bringing me, or what is this teaching me, so that we can move on or do better, or create an opportunity out of it, right? Rather
Yeah.
than sink us down.
Let's move on to the business opportunities. We've discovered what the individual can do, and obviously there's loads more. So please follow Hannah or I to kind of continue this part of the conversation. But as a business, what are the couple of ideas that you've got to help leaders really start harnessing the power of their people?
So, Sarah, I've been working with some CEOs and business owners with their teams, and what I found is, by investing in various training and workshops and giving them opportunities to upskill, which really empowers them not only on the obvious learning outcomes of whatever it is that you're training them on, but it gives them an opportunity to feel invested in, to feel appreciated, to ask questions within themselves as to, how am I utilizing this information? How am I applying this information and this, whatever it is that you're training them in? So I think this also gives them the opportunity to express themselves better. If you're teaching them if you're training your team on, for example, how to present ideas more effectively to clients, then guess what? This is going to happen. They're going to start being more confident to express and present ideas to the business. And so what I've seen is a complete shift from employees being in a completely reactive state and receiving instructions, to being very proactive in initiating ideas, initiating projects, coming forth with plans and whatever it is. So business wins all around over here. So that's one of the things that I've seen work really well recently. And
yeah, so like again, something I heard was about skills ignition, because once you invest in a certain, and I call them like learning experiences, development experiences, so that you can unlock something for your team. When you give them the space to actually start discovering and start kind of digging into what's important, then actually so much more comes out than what you say, like just the learning objectives that you've got for that session. But it really comes back to obviously creating this culture, this ongoing culture of people being able to speak up, psychological safety, as we all know, inclusive environment where people don't feel like they're being othered for being who they are and contributing what they have to give. Because this is really important, that these environments are created in a way that enable your people, your humans, to speak up, to be able to share, to be able to be creative, and almost really step into being themselves within the business. Because like you say, so many of us kind of go into, oh, I should act like this, I ought to do this. And this really holds us back from really contributing, which means, like you were saying right back at the start, innovative ideas and solutions they're just passing you by. You're not seeing them. And yet the potential's there. There's so much potential with all the problems we've got in the world today. There's so much potential for businesses to create these solutions, but they can only do it by harnessing this power of the power of the imagination.
Yeah. There are so many, as you said, creative solutions and ideas that are hiding within your team members. If only they're given the space to actually come out and say, hey, I actually have a solution for that problem that we're having, or there is a problem. And right. Many times they're not, the managers, senior managers, or whoever, the CEOs, are not knowing of that little problem, which is having a huge impact on the whole value chain of the business, for example. So it's systems and processes that can be improved, made more efficient, made more effective. It's missed business opportunities that could be taken on to grow the business, networks that could be tapped into so many more business opportunities that will impact the bottom line at the end of the day.
Yeah, so I've got a few ideas, but I want to hear your top 3 tips that someone or a leader could take and implement that would actually really help them on this journey.
I think first of all would be developing with your HR teams, or it depends on the business size, of course, but with your HR personnel to identify like a robust training, upskilling program that could also be tailor-made according to the individual's needs. So that for me would be the top priority. And on an ongoing basis, have the formal sort of appraisals, because this is where you're really going to identify the needs and the strengths and the growth opportunities for your individuals. But also as a culture, and that's the third point, having this open space. And you spoke about psychological safety, having a safe environment that you can express yourself in, that you can go to your line manager or to whoever to share, like, hey, I just did this strength test. Can we discuss this to see how I can contribute better, to see how I can utilize my skills and my strengths more effectively within the organization, or how I can grow. So I think those would be the 3 main tips that I would share. And when you think about it, it's really not rocket science. It's so damn simple. It's so not costly either. It doesn't need to be super a costly thing. It's just it's more of a habit. It's more of a culture, and perhaps some SOPs here and there that you need to introduce. But otherwise,
yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I often say, especially on this point, start implementing stay interviews. The amount of people I've seen leaving businesses, and then at the point they hand in their resignation, the business comes back, or their lead comes back. No, you can't leave. We need you. We really appreciate everything you've done, but this person feels completely underappreciated. So I love the kind of the stay interview process, where, once a month, just sitting down, understanding what someone's motivations are, asking them some questions as to, well, what's challenging you at the minute? How can I support you? Why do you choose to work with us? Getting really kind of curious rather than doing leave interviews, actually encouraging people to stay and digging into their motivation, because this builds trust. This builds that space to have those conversations. But the other thing I always say to businesses is, how are you strategically aligning what's important to you into your business strategy? So, how do the decisions you're making align to the values of your business? Because quite often what you see is the values are put there as a great tool, and yet they're not necessarily like incorporated into the structures of the business. So you can look at, like you were saying, the structures that you've got for assessing people. Well, how do they honor our values? Maybe where do they dishonor our values? How could we change them?
yes,
Enable our people? So many people have got values of diversity, inclusion, equality, sustainability even. And yet when you look at the decisions they're making around people within the business, they're not necessarily honoring those values themselves. So I always say, like, it sounds simple, and it should be simple, but actually sometimes our structures, we can find that the structures are not supporting us to fulfill our goals or to live our values within the business. And so that's one of the things as a leader I'd really go and look at, and just start challenging yourself really clearly. When I'm talking to my team, how am I honoring the values of the business? How am I dishonoring them? What would I like to do differently? Not from a point of view making you wrong, but just creating opportunities to do things better.
What's coming up for me with that, Sarah, this is such a good point, because oftentimes the people within the organization, 2 things, are not fully aligned to business values, or vice versa. The company values are just simply written beautiful statements somewhere on a nice graphic designer on the website somewhere. Values, and they're not fully getting their purpose. They're not fully understanding their specific contribution within the wider perspective of the business, within the bigger organization goals.
Yeah.
what does my role, how are my duties contributing to client satisfaction, especially for a member of staff who is not client facing? How does it all link? So where is my purpose? So it's really coming into alignment with that on an individual basis as well, and then on a team, and then on a wide organization. But you also mentioned, the values and all of these things. And there's always been a lot of hype, right, on following and reaching SDG goals. And now we're talking about ESG, and all of these things. Let these guidelines be more than just a checklist of things that your company does. CSR, we always speak about CSR. Like, let's drop the checklist attitude and let's start putting it in as a culture.
Yeah, exactly. Making them fundamental building blocks as to how your company works. How you promote people into leadership who are living your values, who are embodying what it is that you want to achieve, who are really passionate. Because this is how, the Gallup results were clear. And the one liner that it said at the top was, there's one simple answer to better engagement, and that is better leaders. And I think that actually embodies what we're seeing in the world. Is we're coming out of an era where people have been promoted into managerial leadership roles because they're high achievers, they're high performers, but they don't necessarily embody the values of the business. So you've got a lot of people in fairly senior leadership positions who've grown up and been promoted and been appreciated for high individual achievement. And now we're living in a world where actually there's so much more that leadership really means, and how to engage your people. So these people, there's a massive gap between what the world they've grown up in, the world we've both grown up in, and actually what's needed from our leaders today. So we need to help people make that transition. We need to help businesses understand how to change those structures, how to bring people on board, the leaders and as well as the employees. And this is where I think we see the gap sometimes, is how we can create that within the culture and create this kind of security, I think, which allows the psychological safety then to be lived as within the business.
Yeah, I just have one last thing to add on that, and that's when it comes to leadership. Not to make, I know we're short, we can continue talking about this for ages, but when it comes to leadership, I think there's also a misconception of what leadership would be for some people, and perhaps there are people in our audiences here listening to us, watching us, who maybe feel disconnected to the word leadership. But for me, leadership is within every single person, and it's how we lead ourselves. So it comes back it comes full circle back to
where we started.
What is my responsibility in this? How do I lead myself? How do I show up in the business? How do I speak with my line manager, with my colleagues, with my team?
Yeah. Always starting with self-leadership. And that doesn't matter where you sit within the business, whether you're the CEO or you've just started out in your career. Always get very clear as to who you are, what's important to you, what strengths you bring. And please don't be afraid to talk about it. Because I know as a leader myself, people come to you, you only see a very small portion of actually what they do. Mm-hmm. And so you can really help people as a leader by helping them pull out their strengths. But be prepared to talk about yourself, but in a positive way, in a way that empowers you and empowers others around you. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much for this conversation, Hannah. It's been amazing. Hannah and I both work with dynamic change makers who are really ready to take action. So if what we've been talking about really resonates with you, if you're ready to take action to really harness the power of your teams, of your employees, and create a real positive cultural change in your business, sort of doing what we were saying about actually taking all of this from being stuff that's on the wall that you feel a bit disconnected to actually creating it into your business, into your goals, into how you're showing up within the business, then please feel free to message us and connect, and we will get back to you on how you can take that next step. So Hannah, thank you so much for your time. I will let you get back to all the other things that I know you need to be doing. And I hope we can have a conversation again soon.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me.
Take care.
Yeah.
Bye for now.
Bye.